All right, welcome back to One True Podcast with Zach Smith, talking Baylor and Big 12 football, and our special guest this week, Scott Springer from the Cincinnati Enquirer. Scott's been with the Enquirer since 2010, but been in the Cincinnati sports media world for a while. He did radio before that. And Scott, thanks for hopping on and talking a little college football.
Yeah, I'm in the bowels of the T-Mobile Center here for basketball media, but I was here for the women's media event yesterday. The men's is today. But all the while, I was monitoring the Cincinnati football press conference, so I had to write something on that. I had to write something about Brett Yormark, who was here again today. By the way, he said the football schedule for 2024 should be out by December, so that's encouraging.
Nice.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's kind of a hectic, hairy day, but I don't know what else to do. I have no other marketable skills, so here I sit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Zach covers the Baylor women, I cover the Baylor men, and so yeah, any notes you can get us on Baylor, just email them our way.
Yeah,
it's been a while since I've been to media day up there, but
I covered Maceo Teague in high school in Cincinnati.
Nice.
And, he was kind of an undiscovered gem that Baylor got, and I think that was the pandemic year that they won in Indianapolis. But yeah, I remember interviewing him from the hotel. It was so odd. Here's a guy that's playing in the national championship, but confined to his hotel. What a weird time. But
yeah, it was crazy. It really was. Yeah, Maceo is certainly beloved in Waco. So guys, about 15 or 20 years ago, there used to be this old ESPN.com column called it just broke down all the college football games of the week, and it also broke down the pillow fight of the week. I'm not sure that Baylor Cincinnati is quite on that pillow fight level, but we are talking about two programs that are pretty desperate for a win. The Bearcats have lost 4 straight since a 2-0 start to the season, including last week 30-10 at home against Iowa State. Meanwhile, Baylor is also 2-4. The Bears had a bye week last week, but the week before that, they laid an egg as well against Texas Tech. So in y'all's view, you cover these teams. What has led to these kind of sluggish first halves of the season for these two programs? And who gets win number 3 on Saturday? Scott, we'll start with you.
Well, the season started with a lot of optimism, actually, because, the first game's Eastern Kentucky. You expect to win that, but then they come out and score, it was 66 points, and everyone figured to win, but it was kind of a blowout. And then the next game is at Pitt, and they make us writers do these preseason prediction things. So I had Pitt down as a loss because you're going to Pitt. This is kind of a new group of guys, and Pitt's been pretty good in the ACC. Well, they beat Pitt, and actually it was pretty convincing for about 3 quarters until Pitt made it close in the 4th. So then you're 2-0, and you come home and you have a rivalry game. Miami University is up the road about 45, 50 minutes from Cincinnati. Cincinnati beating them 16 straight seasons, but this year they didn't. It was a winnable game. They were settling for a lot of field goals instead of touchdowns. They actually had a chance to kick a game-winning field goal. It's a loss. That, kind of raised some eyebrows. So then you're 2-1, and you have Oklahoma come in. The Big 12 show comes in, Urban Meyer and that crew, and Brady Quinn, and nice crowd, beautiful day. You hold Oklahoma to 20 points. Again, can't score, but again, that's one you probably ought to lose. But since then, the games have started to become puzzling, starting with going to BYU after that. And that was one where, again, and Cincinnati has had a lot of games this way, where statistically you're beating them in like every category but the final score. And that goes in the BYU game. There was a pick 6 early. There was a dropped punt on the 15, which allowed them another quick score. So 14 points you gave up, beat them in every category, but the Cougars get the win. Last week against Iowa State was the stinker of the year by far, maybe similar to what you guys did with Texas Tech, because it looked like a winnable game, and it was the first game all season that Cincinnati was outrushed and outgained. And the Iowa State defense had a plan, and Cincinnati's offense just really struggled throwing the ball, and they run the ball very well, but they've made some bad decisions throwing, and so instead of what realistically you maybe could be 4-2, you're 2-4, and that makes people grumpy, even though you have a new coach and 32 new players, and you're in a much more competitive league than the AAC.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, I mean, I would say Baylor's had a few more of those stinkers. They haven't actually won a lot of those statistical categories and still lost. I mean, they've just been bad.
Right. Well, especially offensively. I think there's we haven't really seen the real Baylor team that we all kind of expected this season. The first game of the season, Blake Shapen gets hurt. He misses 3 games, and then the offensive line is still trying to piece things together. The running game that Baylor is supposed to be built around is pretty much non-existent, especially against Tech. And I know Richard Reese was kind of dinged up in the Tech game, but he'll be back full go for Cincinnati. So I think that this is probably it might have taken 6 games, but maybe I'm expecting to kind of see Baylor maybe break out a little bit and kind of be the team that kind of we expected them to. Bryson Jackson mentioned it yesterday that, those players that were kind of battling some injuries and were maybe 75% are now up to probably 90%. And I think at this point in the season, that's pretty good. So, I know that, there's not a lot of optimism around Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, and Dave Aranda, and, just Baylor in general. But, I think Cincinnati is kind of that perfect moment, that perfect team for the Bears to kind of get back to that upper middle class Big 12 team that I think we all expected them to be.
Yeah, so I would look at this game as kind of what you would call a get-right game for both Baylor and Cincinnati. I'm sure the Bearcats are looking at Baylor going, we can beat those guys, and, vice versa, which is why I think what line I saw is it a point?
2.5 to Cincinnati's a 2.5 point favorite, I believe.
I looked today and it said 3, but I think they give you 3 anymore just for playing at home. So,
right.
They were about the same against Iowa State, and that went south in a hurry about midway through the second quarter.
Yeah. So, guys, when the Big 12 added Cincinnati and BYU, Houston, UCF, I actually called it the 4 best free agents they could have gone out and signed in terms of this conference. However, the league's new schools haven't exactly set the Big 12 ablaze. The new schools are just 1-9 against the old established Big 12 teams. And that one win came last Thursday in a Hail Mary game. Houston pulled it off against West Virginia, 41-39. So is this a sign that it's going to take a little time for the new guys to kind of adjust and make that transition? Or do you think it's a cyclical thing and maybe these teams are just in a down cycle in 2023? What do you think?
I think maybe it's a little bit of both. I was at Big 12 Media Days in Dallas, and UCF got all the attention in the world for a new team. I mean, they were kind of graded out as one to look out for. And there's your one Big 12 win, and quite a win that is, 35-7 down in the third quarter and come back and beat them at the bounce house 36-35. I don't know how much bouncing it was doing after that. It
a lot of the fans had left by that point.
It sounds more like a deflation than a bounce. But,
right.
But yeah, that's a heck of a win, really. And you would think that would have been something that would have turned the Bears around. And then
agreed.
Because it's amazing to me, and not having seen your team other than just reading stats and reports and things like that, but losing 4 out of 5 at home will definitely irritate your fan base. Just as Cincinnati, it's been rare for them to lose at home, and they've lost now 3 straight at home. That's very, very odd. I think all the new teams probably suffer from depth issues compared to the traditional Big 12 teams. I think BYU, they have a pretty good tradition. They got thumped last week, which was out of the ordinary, but they normally get their guys. UCF, you're in Florida, you've got all the talent in the world there because every school comes to Florida to recruit speed. Houston probably ought to be better. They did pull that out of their hat there at the end. That was a very exciting game to watch. And then, Cincinnati, like I said, after the first two games, you're thinking, well, maybe this isn't so bad because a lot of the guys that they picked up out of the portal had been at Power 5 conferences before, like 16 of 17 of the 32 had played on major levels. And, Xavier Henderson was Florida's top receiver last year with 38 catches. He's at 30 now. But, I think and this might be an issue with the portal when you're going and getting a new team every year. It's like, well, who's the team leader? Because, in the old days, the guy had been there 4 or 5 years. Come on, guys. Yeah, this is not what we stand for. Well, what do we stand for anymore? Because we just showed up in town 2-3 months ago and, maybe we got a truck to play or something, but what do you stand for? That's a little shot at Utah, by the way. There's no trucks being handed out in Cincinnati. I guarantee you that. I mean, that's a whole nother part of the equation here, the complexity of NIL and how you get guys and how do you keep guys and what are you getting? Are you getting any loyalty or is everybody just chasing the bag?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think, we're seeing basically college free agency these days. But Zach, I mean, do you think it's cyclical or do you think these teams are just a little down right now?
I mean, I think they're a little down right now. I think Satterfield made a really, really good point yesterday at his press conference, and it was admittedly a little bit of coach speak, but it was true that the difference in going from the American or the Sun Belt, right? He was at Appalachian State, is just level of consistent execution, right? I think there's a reason, we watch, Maction and the Fun Belt, these midweek games that kind of sometimes devolve into chaos. I think that, when we get to the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10, yeah, those chaotic games happen, but I think it's far less so. And I think it's just that the floor of execution is much higher. And so I think that's, at least to begin for Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, that's kind of the hurdle that I think they're kind of pushing up against so far this season. So I think they'll get there. There's no reason to, especially like the points that have already been mentioned with the portal and NIL, they'll get there. But I think this season is kind of a blip on the radar in that regard.
Yeah, and I think it showed in the preseason rankings, the preseason poll in the Big 12. None of the 4 new teams were rated that highly. And obviously Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, Houston, they've all had really good seasons in recent years. Obviously Cincinnati was in the playoff not that long ago. So I think, it is kind of one of these things that, you're up, you're down. I also think, though, that once these schools are in the Big 12 for a few seasons, that will help. It'll help in recruiting, and it'll help in bringing that Big 12 money in and upgrading some facilities. I know Zach and I went to UCF that game, and no offense to UCF, but to me, it felt like a big Texas high school football stadium.
Yeah.
It's okay, but does it match up with?
The basketball arena is not all that either. So.
Right. So,
and you figure what, 60, 70,000 students, there's some money coming in. And
yeah. So that Big 12 money will help all these programs for sure. So the flip side of the imports not doing much is that the exports are actually killing it. The Big 12's only 2 ranked teams. Scott, if you see your Mark walking by, we'll get his take on this.
Yeah, I'll just pull him aside. He's not doing anything.
The only two ranked teams are, of course, Oklahoma and Texas. Obviously, this time next year, the Sooners and Longhorns will be in the SEC. Again, I'm on record as saying that I think the Big 12 is going to be fine. It's going to be good in 2024 and beyond. But at the same time, how much do you guys think that the Big 12 will miss Oklahoma and Texas?
Well, I think you miss them, but on the other hand, like I would tell their fans, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
I've said that about a lot of coaches too that skip town, which Cincinnati's had a few that do that. And then, you go to some bigger leagues and you get a bigger payday, but, you also get a very demanding fan base. Ask Butch Jones how that went in Tennessee. And, we'll see what Luke Fickell does at Wisconsin and all. And plus there's cost of living factors and things. Cincinnati is a fairly easy town to get around, and you can go to a major town and it's going to cost you more money. So you're going to need whatever money you're getting. But yeah, I don't know. I think in the end, the four teams that came in will turn it around. It's just the law of averages. They were picked for a reason. The influx of money is dramatic. I think UC only gets a partial for the next 2 years, but that is like 18 million and 19 million, which they're only getting about 7 from the AAC. And then in year 3, it kicks into the 30, 31 or whatever it is. And they're building stuff on campus and adding a new indoor practice facility. They did have like a bubble type thing. Now they're adding an indoor performance center and then a separate adjacent nutrition center. So 2 buildings going where the old so-called bubble was. So a lot of that, when they bring kids in, they have to show them, hey, we got some cranes going on here, but this is what it's going to look like eventually. So I think, the other schools are probably doing the same thing. So it's already a great basketball league. I think it'll be fine football wise, because those teams that all came in all had some measure of success before in football. They were at the top of their leagues. But that's it. On the other end of it, that's one of the things that's hurting, I think, Satterfield now. He is playing in the Big 12. It's like maybe if you were in the AAC, they're not at 2-4. Maybe they sneak out a few of these wins. And people do have unrealistic expectations, because I can go back in history and tell you some of the coaches that in their first year didn't do well. Butch Jones 4-8, Luke Fickell first year 4-8, probably should have been 1-11. It was dreadful. And then the next year they turn it around. I don't know. Anyone on a new job, it's like everyone has this drive-through window mentality of I want it now. It has to be perfect. It's like that's not the way life works.
Right. Absolutely.
It's peaks and valleys.
So, Zach, you've kind of been banging the drum for the Longhorns all year, talking about how good they were. How much is the Big 12 going to miss, OU and Texas?
I think they'll miss the eyeballs that obviously Texas and OU bring to the conference. Looking analytically, the most read stories were during Texas week for me. But, I think in the long run, I don't honestly know how much the Big 12 is going to miss from a competitive standpoint, how much they're going to miss them. I think that maybe a little parity is good, right? Where it's not just Oklahoma winning it year after year and Texas, are they back, asking that question year after year now that SEC can deal with that. So now we kind of get different colors and different teams and different personalities coming out. So, and then we've already mentioned the basketball side of things. It's just going to be both men and women. It's just going to be, especially with Arizona and Colorado coming in later, like just going to be elite. So yeah, right now this year, yes, it's up in arms. Ask Yormark all the questions about having the 2 best teams leave, but I think in the long run, I think it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, obviously they are 2 humongous brand names in college football. I mean, they are historic programs, and the Big 12 clearly did not want to lose them. Bob Bowlesby was certainly caught off guard by that announcement when it came down a couple summers back. I'm going to miss it from the standpoint of, rivalries and such. For Baylor, it's, Baylor fans love to beat Texas. They love to beat A&M in anything. It could be checkers, and so that part of it is going to be missed. These are Baylor and Texas have played, what did we say, Zach, 119
times
113 times. So that's going to be sad. I still run into old timers all the time in Waco who say, man, I miss the Southwest Conference, and so I think from a rivalry standpoint it'll be missed. And I agree, Zach, that those two teams do bring a lot of eyeballs to the league, but it is going to create a very wide open competitive league, I think. So before we go, Scott, Zach will actually be up in Cincy this weekend for that game. And, this is kind of a self-serving question, but, we're sports writers. We got to talk about food. So where does he need to go? And, are there any things that he needs to check out besides, of course, the Skyline chili that everybody raves about?
Yeah. Well, have you had the Skyline chili first?
No, I have family in Columbus, so I've been in Columbus a bunch, but I never got much further south.
Right. They do have some in some parts of northern Ohio, but if you're going to have that, there is one close to the university in a little area called Quarryville, and it's drivable from the stadium area, and that's one. Come winter time, you guys aren't used to winter so much, but on a really snowy night when the windows are steamed up, that hot chili. Now it's not hot like spicy hot Texas chili. It's a whole different animal, but it tastes good on nights like that. And quite honestly, anyone that grew up in Cincinnati will tell you that was kind of the go-to munchie food if you were out carousing around. It's like some of those places, they'd be open till 4 a.m. or something like that. So everybody needs a little grease on occasion, I guess. But it's a unique food. You can't compare it to Texas chili. It's just something you grow up with. It's like when I go to Philly and I like a cheesesteak every now and then, but I eat it and I go, well, was that life changing? Not really. It was okay, and I understand it. So other than that, I don't know what you're after. Texas, and I'm in Kansas City, and I've been to Memphis. So you want to talk ribs and things like that, those are the places to be. There is the Cincinnati version of ribs is the Montgomery Inn, but it is, again, a totally different product, more of a sweeter thing. And they've got a nice place down by the river called the Boathouse, and then one outside of town. It's a German town, so naturally there's breweries about every 100, 200 yards or so.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, Rheingeist is the bigger one downtown. And the Mad Tree, there's let's see, and I'm trying to think around UC, which I don't know. UC doesn't really have one that's not so much close by, but they're all over. You can go on your maps and see, I might have done this before, but you can just type in brewery, nice. And it's like ding, 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 and you can pick a winner out of those. So
nice.
Then if you like ice cream, it's Grader's ice cream.
Okay.
That's ice cream and beer I wouldn't recommend.
No. But I know that the game kicks off at noon Eastern, 11 Central, right. And I know that I'm a big soccer fan, so I think I was wondering if there's a chance.
Cincinnati team is that's a big deal too.
That starts at 6. So
yeah, you can do both. If you write quick, you can get down there to the FC game, and they have that's a new part of town that they're developing, and the current Cincinnati arena is down by the river where Great American Ballpark, the baseball stadium, and Paycor, the Bengals stadium, are down there. But there's talk about an arena coming to where the soccer stadium is, which is in another part of town that they're trying to spruce up. So they draw great crowds, and I've heard nothing but good from anyone that goes to the games. So FC Cincinnati.
Like I said, we are very much self-serving around here. We like to get the good local recommendations. So, Scott, we appreciate your expertise on that. But and certainly when Cincinnati comes down to play Baylor, and in whatever, we'll have you back on. We'll give you some good recommendations. So
I'm sure I'll be there at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
cool.
yeah, they'll get maybe they should have a pillowcase trophy for this thing Saturday and have him fight it out,
I like it. Cool. Well, Scott, enjoy Big 12 basketball media days. And, I guess, Zach, we'll see you at the game on Saturday.
See you there.
All right. I'll be there.
Thanks, guys.